Thanks for tuning into Bartender Administration with the blends of the virtual world. My name is Joe Schofield, and over the course of this syllabus we're going to be looking at and delving into a number of different topics that aren't really commonplace in the hospitality industry from an operations perspective. Whether you're a bartender, a chef, a server, these are skills that you would normally find in a more corporate environment. It's my hope that you'll take these skills and apply them to your working life, and you can continue to learn them from the comfort of your own home. Each module comes with downloadable content that you can utilise in the workplace. This module is all about personal branding. The ideals of a brand are always much bigger than the people working within that brand. Once you start to create a strong brand identity, that brand becomes bigger than you. First of all, you need to work out who you are, what you stand for, how you want to be perceived and recognised by the wider world, the wider audience. Once you find these ideals that are from your core beliefs, it's really easy for you to be able to portray them from a personal branding point of view. It's really important when you work out who you are and what you stand for, that you must realise this is how you're going to be perceived by everybody else. And it's important that you enable yourself to make those decisions to increase the strength of that perception. Throughout my career, I've continually changed and adapted the way that I wanted to be perceived, and the majority of those decisions were all made by the place that I was working. When I was working in a tiki bar, I'd be wearing Hawaiian shirts on my days off. I'd be reading about the movement of tiki, understand a little bit more about the history, visiting other tiki bars, other rum bars, all to try and strengthen the brand that I'm currently working for and get a real understanding of that. At a later stage in my career, I spent some time working at the Savoy, a very luxurious, elegant, classic institution and also a 5-star hotel, and I always wanted to make sure that I was representing that brand to the best of my abilities. I started dressing a little bit smarter. I started wearing jackets, I started wearing suits to formal occasions, because me doing those things made sense for me to represent the brand that I was also representing. From a branding perspective, it's always vital to be able to work with brands that you're proud to work of, brands that share similar ideals and similar values. I only ever work with brands that I feel proud to be aligned with. I've turned down work in the past with brands that might not necessarily be in line with my personal brand. Still might be a great product, still might be a great business, but it doesn't make sense from my point of view to be able to align my brand with something that isn't in line with my values. After my time in London working at the Savoy, I moved over to Singapore to be group bar manager of 5 venues, and the jewel of the crown was a fine dining restaurant called Tippling Club. I made the decision to really dive into my work and try and understand more about that bigger picture. From a wider angle point of view, I saw so much opportunity in working closer with chefs, something that was really a bit of a trend at the time, where bartenders were trying to understand the thought process of chefs, trying to use more chef-like ingredients and techniques, and I really wanted to represent, again, the venue that I was working at to the best of my ability. I spent time visiting other fine dining restaurants. I spent time learning about food, learning about wine. I even spent days in the kitchen on my days off to be able to understand a little bit more about the way that the chefs work. And this is where I really started to find my own unique identity of having a wider spectrum of hospitality and understanding more about the restaurant and food side of things. I adapted some of these techniques and approaches into my cocktails and my day-to-day work, basically. Even taking skills that you wouldn't really think about as being a bartender. Something as simple as learning the art of sharpening knives was something that I wanted to learn from the kitchen and bring into my identity and brand of being aligned with chefs. When developing your personal brand or even developing your career, I think it's very important to not be afraid of asking questions. Some of these questions can be quite uncomfortable, and I'm very much of the mindset that if you don't ask, you don't get. Creating opportunities with brands, I've gone out and pitched ideas. Even the act of writing the cocktail book, that wasn't something that was presented to us, that was something we went out, we asked the question. And I think if you ever really want to develop and push yourself further in your career path, you should never be afraid to ask that question. When I was a younger bartender, I always had a bit of a path in mind of what I wanted to achieve, where I wanted to work, and what I wanted to accomplish. And if I was in a room with somebody who was working in a venue that I wanted to work at, I would go over, I'd say hello, introduce myself, and make sure that I'm being perceived as somebody that they could potentially hire as an employee or even a colleague. That's something that's always been quite instrumental to my career movement, is making sure that I am perceived in the right way that I want to be perceived to be able to move to that next step of my career. I recently had some branding developed for my personal brand, and with this I wanted to make sure that all of the collateral was seamless. Your biography is a great way to be able to demonstrate your value, to tell your story, to list some of the recognition that you've been fortunate enough to receive. It's great for sharing with press, as it can maybe be able to drum up some more support, which enables you to grow out your brand even further and get more visibility. I'm also very protective and selective of the images that I use for my profile shots. I want to make sure that they are engaging and they are a true representation of what I stand for. Your biography is a document that tells people your experience, your story, and also what your brand stands for. Perhaps there's some recognition that you've received which you can add into it, again to help demonstrate your value. Your biography gets used across multiple different mediums, from press releases to social media to documentation to even on people's websites. And you need to make sure that the text in there really portrays the ideals of what you stand for. You also want to make sure that you are giving care and attention to detail to everything. This is your personal brand. Not only is it reflective of who you are and what you stand for, but yourself and your work ethic as well. So you want to make sure that you are protective over that. You should really be going over everything that is going out regarding your brand, whether that's a press release, photography, videos. You really want to make sure that you are giving the attention to detail to this sort of thing, as it can be vitally important to the way that everybody else perceives you. You must also be genuine. The way that your brand is perceived by everybody else needs to also be reflective of who you are as a person, what you stand for, your characteristics, your traits. To be absolutely genuine, it even goes down to your social media. That should be a reflection of your personality and who you are as an individual. I think it's always important to be aware of your personal brand, and when you are working with other people or other brands and collaborating with them, you always want to make sure that it's a relationship that you can be extremely proud of. It's brand alignment. You're aligning your brand with the ideals of another brand, a shared group of ideals. If you want to build a personal brand, you must certainly have a focus. You must have a set of goals that you want to achieve, and you must be attuned and driven to be able to make those things happen. A lot of the projects that do bring certain levels of success do require a lot of time, a lot of dedication, and a lot of focus. A lot of these longer term projects, on that journey you really have moments where you feel that it's impossible and you can't do it. And it's very much like a roller coaster. You're going up and down, and then if you just reset yourself, get back, take a deep breath and become more focused, everything becomes a little bit easier. You must realise that creating value and creating your own value isn't something that really happens overnight. It's a long process where you must also invest in yourself, invest in partnerships with other brands, other businesses and other people. One thing I did early in my career was to try and raise my profile, as it's beneficial for myself, for the bar that I'm working in, and for the people that I'm working with, was to go and be doing activations overseas. I'd go and pay for my own hotels, my own flights, and it was not necessarily about waiting for those opportunities to come to me and be given to me. It was about making those opportunities for myself. There's never just one clear path for a person. There's no one defined path that you can take as a career. Everyone has their own unique approach and unique ideals of what they define as success, and it's about finding the path that's right for you. There are so many ways in our industry that we can be really present and you can continue to raise your profile. Cocktail competitions, seminars, even visiting bars, meeting peers, understanding what peers are doing is vitally important for you to be able to raise your profile. As I touched on previously, I spent some time working in restaurants in Singapore, and one thing that I always admired about seeing the way that chefs work is that they are never scared to invest in their own career path. A lot of young chefs will go and do stage programs at world famous Michelin-starred restaurants to continue their education and continue to learn. Something that I still do is I still volunteer and give my time to certain projects that are going to enhance and continually develop my career and my skill set. If you want to continue developing, you must really be sensitive to the industry that you're in. Understand who the peers are, and if you have any role models or mentors, be following them and seeing what they're doing. The beauty of social media is that you can see what these people are up to on a daily basis, and it's a great way to remain attuned to what is going on in the industry. One of the lessons that I did learn during my career is to embrace networking. The benefits of this are incredible. It opens up so many more doors, so many opportunities for work or for travel. One of the great things about the drinks industry is that we are an industry that continues to help and educate each other, and it is still what I consider a small industry. You do see a lot of the same people all over the world at different events and different shows, and I love that about it. Being able to build a strong presence on social media is vital to the success of your brand. You must understand who your target audience is. I'm currently followed by the majority of bartenders and drinks industry professionals, so I'll always tailor the content to satisfy why those people have followed me. A lot of people around the world will never get the opportunity to meet you or even try one of your drinks, but if you have a platform for people to be able to see what you're doing, it helps satisfy that need. You should never be afraid to go out and pitch ideas. Some of these opportunities won't come to you, you have to go out and get them. Just go out and ask the question. Having a product in the marketplace is a great way to generate a passive income, to spread your focus and work on different areas that you feel very passionately about. Creating products such as Schofields Dry Vermouth and Schofields Fine and Classic cocktails was a great way to be able to get my personal brand in front of a wider audience, an audience that is full of consumers, not just the on-trade, with products that are designed for both. You must also keep educating yourself, not just looking at, books that are about the industry. Yes, it is important to have a knowledge on cocktails, spirits, hospitality, service, wine, coffee, but it's also important to have an understanding of other principles that may affect your working life. Principles such as photography or food. There's so many different elements that we can bring in to our daily job as a bartender, but even from a wider angle, having an understanding about finance or accountancy can really help you develop. I believe every professional bartender should have a business card. This is a great way for you to be able to stay in touch with these people, with your contact number, perhaps your logo, your email address, your name, your place of work. It's considered rude in certain cultures not to have one, and it's a great way of just being able to stay in touch with some people that you may be able to help, and vice versa. It's never sat quite right with me, the culture of throwing away business cards. It never really happens as well that people do the done thing and follow up with a business card so you can remain in touch. There's so many other ways that you can get your personal brand distributed. My brother and I recently had some QR codes developed that when the user scans these codes, it acts as a business card, instantly saving all of our contact information onto the user's phone. Email, phone number, website, social media handles, and our position within the business. Not only is this a great way to get around the sustainability element, but also people are actually a little bit shocked and surprised that they can do that, and you actually remain connected to these people, as they will always have your information saved on the phone. The majority of the time, when you exchange business cards, people don't do the done thing and send a follow-up email so you remain connected. This way, the user will always have your information at hand. With regards to your image, you always want to make sure that you are perceived to be acting in the way of your personal brand. At industry events with peers, you certainly don't want to be the most drunk person in the room. Your peers are watching, potential employers are watching, and the brands are watching. You always want to make sure that you're not denying yourself of other potential opportunities by the way that you behave in certain situations. One thing that I do take pride in is how punctual I am. I never want people to feel that I value my own time more than theirs. It's a polite and professional courtesy. If I am to RSVP for an event, if I say yes and I've committed to that, I'll make sure I'm there. And perhaps, things do happen, things do change. Some of these are unforeseen. I'll always make sure that the event organiser does have 48 hours notice that I will no longer be able to attend. I wanted to have a shop window for my work, somewhere where I can showcase the drinks that I've created, showcase the products that I've created, and an opportunity for consumers and an audience to be able to purchase some of these things. I also wanted to make sure that there was a way for me to be able to be contacted by anybody in the world regarding work. And the website has a submission form where people can contact me directly. I think a lot of my work at the moment is based on the relationship I have with brands. And if I was a brand manager, I'd be much more inclined to work with somebody if they had a logo and a website. The ideal of a logo really helps you to build that element of trust with consumers, trust and loyalty. The website also acts as an archive for everything that I've done. All my old drink imagery, the cocktails that I've created are all available to view on there. There's even a section where you can download my biography, my story, which may help internally when a business is trying to make a decision of who they should be working with. From a branding perspective, it is so much more than just a logo. This is a great opportunity for you to be able to tell people and show people who you are and what you stand for in a split second. If you have a more classical approach to the way that you work, that should be represented in your branding. If you pride yourself in innovation and how you continue to push the boundaries, that should also come across. Personally, I wanted something that was contemporary, something that was an icon of me and what I do. Your branding isn't necessarily just about the logo, it's about the typefaces, the colour palette. All of these are incredibly important to the way that your brand is perceived. When you are working with people, you want to make sure that it's an enjoyable experience. I've personally stopped working with certain people in the past because I didn't enjoy that experience. For me, work is something that is essential to us all, and it is something that we all have to do on a daily basis. So you want to make sure that it is as enjoyable as possible, not just for yourself, but for also the people that you work with. Things never always go to plan, and sometimes you do fail, you do get knocked back, and you don't want to let that really stop you from advancing. Maybe you ask a question and you get told a no. But if you don't ask, it's always going to be a no, right? So you always want to make sure that you do bounce back from some of these setbacks. I have always been very fortunate in my career that I have managed to be able to work in the venues that I wanted to work at, learn from the people that I wanted to work at. But it wasn't always the case. I've certainly had a lot of setbacks in my early days as a bartender. It took me quite a while to be able to find my footing into the level of venue that I was inspired by and wanted to turn up to work at every single day. I think it's about being a little bit resilient and making sure that if something does set you back, it doesn't stop you and you still have that attitude and mentality that you can accomplish what you want to accomplish. With all the points that we've mentioned, it can really help you create a strong personal brand. But you must be mindful of that it's an ongoing process. You're always trying to find ways to improve and to create a bigger, better brand that is more in line with your ideals. So this brings us to the end of the syllabus. Thank you very much for taking the time to watch, and I hope the information that I've shared will help you to improve your work and become a more productive version of yourself. Thank you.